Hello, and welcome. You are watching Step Up Medicine's video on the control of breathing. You don't have to think about breathing, but your brain is working around the clock to make sure you do. In this episode you'll learn where the respiratory centers are located in the brain, how chemoreceptors monitor carbon dioxide, oxygen, and pH, what normally drives breathing, and how that changes in disease, and how factors like opioids or high altitude affect respiratory control. Breathing is controlled by the brainstem, specifically by centers in the medulla and pons. Let's start with the medulla. The medulla contains two main respiratory groups, gebula. The dorsal respiratory group controls quiet inspiration. It sends signals to the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles. This group maintains the basic rhythm of breathing. Think of it as your built-in breathing pacemaker. The ventral respiratory group becomes active during forced breathing. It helps recruit accessory muscles of inspiration and expiration. This happens during exercise, stress, or respiratory distress. Within the ventral group is the pre-Botzinger complex, a cluster of neurons thought to generate the rhythmic pattern of breathing. Now the pons is cavelled. The pons contains two additional centers that fine-tune the rhythm. The pneumotaxic center shortens inspiration. It helps control the rate of breathing by determining when to switch from inspiration to expiration. The apneustic center does the opposite. It prolongs inspiration and helps promote deeper breaths. Together, the medulla and pons coordinate automatic, rhythmic, and adaptable breathing. Your brain continuously monitors blood gases to adjust breathing. There are two types of chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors are located in the medulla. They respond to changes in carbon dioxide indirectly by sensing the pH of cerebrospinal fluid. They are the main long-term drivers of ventilation. Peripheral chemoreceptors are located in the carotid bodies and aortic bodies. They respond to low oxygen, high carbon dioxide, and low pH. They respond quickly, but they usually only take control when oxygen levels drop significantly. In healthy people, carbon dioxide is the primary stimulus for breathing. Quivchi. Even a small rise in PaCO will increase ventilation. If arterial oxygen drops very low, below about 60 mm of mercury, the peripheral chemoreceptors become the main drivers of ventilation. This is a backup system that's usually quiet, but it becomes essential in certain diseases. For example, in chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, patients often have chronically elevated CO. Over time, the brain adapts and becomes less sensitive to carbon dioxide. In these patients, low oxygen becomes the main respiratory drive. Sulfur-coxo. This is called hypoxic drive. Menden. Giving too much oxygen to these patients can suppress their drive to breathe. Breathing can also be voluntarily controlled. You can hold your breath, sing, or speak on command. These voluntary actions come from the cerebral cortex. But if CO levels rise too much, the brainstem overrides voluntary control and forces you to breathe. Other brain regions can influence breathing too. The limbic system and hypothalamus respond to emotion, pain, and temperature. Stretch receptors in the lungs prevent overinflation, and irritant receptors in the airways can trigger coughing or bronchoconstriction. Breathing isn't just automatic, it's also integrated with emotion, environment, and behavior. Now let's apply this to real-world scenarios. In opioid overdose, opioids suppress the medullary respiratory centers. Tibildam or Durbinant, this reduces the response to CO, leading to hypoventilation, rising CO levels, and eventually respiratory acidosis. At high altitude, atmospheric oxygen is low. Peripheral chemoreceptors respond by increasing ventilation. Over days to weeks, the body adapts by producing more red blood cells and more 2,3-BPG in red blood cells. In a panic attack, people hyperventilate. This blows off too much CO, causing respiratory alkalosis. That leads to dizziness, tingling, and lightheadedness. In brainstem injury, such as trauma or herniation, breathing can be severely impaired or stop completely. Mechanical ventilation is often required. Let's review the key points. The medulla and pons control automatic breathing rhythm. Central chemoreceptors respond to CO and pH. They're the primary drivers. Peripheral chemoreceptors respond to low oxygen, high CO, and low pH. Voluntary control exists, but the brainstem takes over if CO rises too much. Diseases, drugs, and altitude can all influence who's in charge, and how breathing is regulated. Here is a quick question to test your knowledge. Which center in the brainstem is primarily responsible for triggering inspiration? A. Pneumotaxic center. B. Apneustic center. C. Dorsal respiratory group. D. Ventral respiratory group. Drop your answers in the comments. If this helped clarify your basics, like and subscribe for more high-yield videos. Up next, we will be taking a closer look at ventilation-perfusion relationships. Thanks for watching, and keep stepping up your knowledge.